The Galactic Council's xenobiology report was damning in its clinical precision. Species, Homo sapiens. Visual acuity. Severely limited compared to galactic standard. Spectral range. Pathetically narrow at 380 to 700 nanometers. Night vision capabilities. Practically non-existent by advanced civilization metrics. Ambassador Elena Vasquez read the assessment aloud to her human delegation. Her voice steady despite the calculated insult. The words echoed through the crystalline conference chamber, each syllable amplified by the Council's advanced acoustic system. Around the massive hexagonal table, representatives from dozens of species shifted with what could only be described as collective amusement. The Kythera's compound eyes gleamed like polished obsidian, each facet reflecting a different spectrum of light that humans couldn't even perceive, while the Vorthan's heat-sensing organs pulsed with infrared satisfaction at humanity's apparent inadequacy. "Your species," hissed Council Prime Zethkar, his massive serpentine form coiled in the ceremonial speaking position atop his elevated platform, "possesses perhaps the most primitive visual system we have encountered among spacefaring civilizations. Your inability to perceive beyond the narrow visible spectrum is quaint. How you manage to develop interstellar technology with such profound sensory limitations remains a biological curiosity worthy of study." The chamber erupted in a symphony of alien agreement. Chittering, buzzing, harmonic resonances, and electromagnetic pulses of derision filled the air. The insectoid hive queen Nexus' 1,000 compound eyes blinked in perfect synchronized mockery, each orb capable of detecting polarized light patterns invisible to human perception. On Nexaprime, she clicked with obvious disdain. "Our juveniles, our children, possess superior night vision capabilities compared to your fully mature adult specimens." Elena smiled, an expression completely lost on most of the alien assembly, who communicated through bioluminescence, electromagnetic fields, or chemical releases. "I see," she said simply, her tone carrying subtle undertones that the translation matrices couldn't quite capture. "Barely," added the gaseous Etherian representative, its amorphous form shimmering with bioluminescent humor as it shifted between dimensions, existing partially in spectrums that human science could barely theorize about. The formal evaluation continued for what felt like an eternity. Each species took turns presenting their visual superiority with the enthusiasm of children showing off new toys. The Kythera demonstrated their ability to see across 17 different electromagnetic spectrums simultaneously, from radio waves to gamma radiation. The Vorthans proudly displayed their capacity to perceive heat signatures through solid matter up to 3 meters thick, tracking living beings through starship hulls. The crystalline Zeridians manipulated light itself, bending photons around their bodies to achieve perfect invisibility. The Etherians existed partially in dimensions that human minds couldn't even conceptualize, let alone observe. Each demonstration was met with impressed murmurs from the other delegates, followed by pointed glances toward the human section of the chamber. When the lengthy session finally ended, Elena gathered her papers with deliberate, measured calm. Her movements were precise, controlled, a stark contrast to the alien delegates who floated, slithered, or phased between positions. "Thank you all for this truly illuminating assessment of human capabilities," she said, her words carrying just enough emphasis to suggest multiple meanings. "Your species will be assigned to Mining Caste 7, Zethkar announced with the finality of a judge pronouncing sentence. His hood flared with authority as he continued. "Your limited sensory capabilities make you fundamentally unsuitable for security operations, deep space exploration, or military applications. Perhaps in the depths of asteroid mining facilities, your limitations will prove less problematic." Several delegates hissed what passed for laughter among their species. "Of course," Elena replied with gracious acceptance. "Though I should mention, we humans have an old saying from our homeworld. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog." The advanced translation systems throughout the chamber struggled with the Earth idiom, producing confused static and error tones across multiple communication channels. Several species translators simply gave up, emitting frustrated beeping sounds. "What does this canine reference signify?" demanded the Hive Queen, her thousand eyes focusing on Elena with collective confusion. We detect no logical connection between domesticated quadrupeds and combat effectiveness metrics. Elena's smile widened, revealing distinctly predatory human teeth, an expression that some of the more perceptive aliens found oddly unsettling. "Don't worry," she said, standing to leave. "You'll understand soon enough." 3 cycles later, the void wraiths struck without warning. They materialized from the black between stars like nightmares given form, creatures of living shadow that had terrorized the galaxy's rim worlds for over 3 millennia. Ancient cosmic predators that existed in the spaces between light. They were legends whispered in a dozen languages across countless worlds. No species had ever successfully defended against them. No military force had ever tracked them. No weapon had ever harmed them. They moved through absolute darkness with terrifying intelligence, striking with surgical precision before vanishing into the cosmic deep like smoke dispersing in solar wind. The emergency council session erupted in barely controlled panic. The usually serene chamber buzzed with electromagnetic distress signals, chemical fear pheromones, and the harmonic discord of terrified alien voices. Holographic visual displays flickered throughout the space, showing the aftermath of the attacks. Entire research colonies stripped clean, their populations vanished without a trace. Orbital defense platforms found empty and dark, their crews gone, their weapons unfired. Security footage from dozens of worlds showed the same horrifying pattern. Lights failing in sequence, darkness consuming everything like a living tide. Then, absolute nothing. They absorb all electromagnetic radiation across the entire spectrum, reported science cast leader Vexhull, his cybernetic implants pulsing with nervous energy as streams of data flowed across his enhanced consciousness. From radio waves to gamma rays, from infrared to ultraviolet, everything disappears into them. They exist in complete photonic void. Our most advanced deep space sensors, our quantum resonance detectors, our tachyon pulse arrays, none can track them. Council Prime Zethkar's massive hood flared in distress, his scales rippling with patterns that indicated deep fear among his species. "How many worlds have fallen to these things?" 17 colonies in the past cycle alone, Vexhull replied, his voice crackling with electronic distortion. 3 major mining operations, 2 research stations, and a dozen agricultural settlements. The attack pattern is accelerating exponentially. Our predictive algorithms suggest they're building toward something larger. The chamber's temperature dropped perceptibly as the various species processed this information. The Kithera representatives' compound eyes darkened with fear, their usual prismatic gleam replaced by matte black surfaces. Our thermal imaging arrays detect absolutely nothing. These creatures produce no heat signature whatsoever. They appear to exist at absolute zero temperatures. Our gravitational sensors register only minor space-time distortions, added the Vorthan delegate, his heat-sensing organs dim with worry. The readings are so subtle they're within normal cosmic background fluctuation, completely insufficient for targeting solutions or tactical tracking. All attention turned to the Etherian representative. If any species could perceive creatures that existed partially outside normal reality, it would be them. "What of your multidimensional perception?" Zethkar demanded. The gaseous being's form flickered with uncertainty, its usual confident luminescence replaced by nervous sparking. They exist partially outside our dimensional framework. We can sense their presence like shadows cast across realities we cannot fully access. But we cannot predict their movements, cannot target them, cannot even fully perceive their true forms. A heavy, suffocating silence fell across the chamber. The galaxy's most technologically advanced species, beings who could see across spectrums unknown to most civilizations, who could perceive reality through senses that bordered on the supernatural, were effectively blind against this ancient threat. Elena cleared her throat quietly. "If I may offer a suggestion, the mining caste has no place in military strategic discussions," Zethkar snapped, his hood contracting with dismissal. "This threat requires the galaxy's most advanced sensory capabilities." "With all due respect, Prime," Elena said, her voice carrying a calm confidence that seemed oddly out of place in the panicked chamber. "You're about to lose more worlds. Many more. We humans have extensive experience with unconventional warfare tactics." The Hive Queen's 1,000 compound eyes focused on Elena with collective disdain, creating an almost hypnotic pattern of synchronized movement. "Your species cannot even see adequately in standard low-light conditions. These creatures exist in absolute void. Beyond darkness, beyond the absence of light itself." Elena's smile was barely visible in the chamber's standard lighting. "Exactly," she said simply. "Which is precisely why you need us." Confused chittering filled the chamber, accompanied by electromagnetic pulses of bewilderment. The Vorthan delegate's heat sensors pulsed erratically. "Explain this apparent paradox. How does demonstrable visual weakness become tactical strength against impossible enemies?" Elena stood slowly, her movement precise and confident despite the chamber's lighting, illumination that other species found barely adequate for basic navigation. Her posture was relaxed, predatory. "You see too much. Your senses are so incredibly advanced that you've forgotten how to fight when you can't see your enemy." "Preposterous," hissed Zethkar. "Superior sensory capabilities are always advantageous in combat situations." "Are they, Prime?" Elena's voice carried a strange, dangerous edge. "Tell me, what do you do when your enemies take away your greatest strength?" "You adapt," Elena continued, beginning to pace the chamber's perimeter with fluid, predatory grace. "But your species never had to. You see in spectrums we can't even imagine, detect heat signatures through solid matter 3 meters thick, perceive gravitational fluctuations that our instruments can barely register. You've never had to fight truly blind because you've never encountered an enemy that could take away your advantages." The assembled delegates stirred uneasily, their various forms of communication creating a low susurrus of electromagnetic distress. Elena's confident movement in their dimly lit chamber, lighting that other species found challenging for basic navigation, had not gone unnoticed. She moved through the space like she owned it, never hesitating, never stumbling, her footsteps silent on the crystalline floor. "Humans," she said, her voice carrying across the chamber with unsettling clarity, "evolved as persistence hunters on a world where absolute darkness fell for 6 cycles out of every 12. We didn't just survive those conditions, we thrived in them. We hunted creatures larger, faster, and stronger than ourselves through forests so dense that light never touched the ground. We learned to kill without seeing our prey, to track without visible signs, to coordinate attacks through environments where vision was useless." Science cast leader Vexhull's implants pulsed skeptically, streams of data cascading across his enhanced consciousness. "Your documented night vision capabilities are demonstrably inferior to galactic baseline standards. Our analysis clearly shows." "You're thinking about this completely wrong," Elena interrupted, her tone sharp enough to cut through his technological arrogance. "Night vision isn't just about seeing photons in darkness. It's about fighting in darkness, moving in darkness, thinking in darkness, becoming one with darkness." She gestured to the chamber around them, her movement encompassing the assembled delegates with casual confidence. "This lighting level, you all consider it dim, barely adequate for formal meetings. Your species require additional illumination for complex tasks. To human eyes, this is practically daylight. We're operating at maybe 30% of our optimal dark adaptation capacity." The Etherian representative flickered with genuine interest, its gaseous form shifting through several dimensional phases. "Elaborate on these claimed capabilities." Elena's eyes seemed to gleam in the chamber's subdued lighting. "Human pupils can dilate to 7 millimeters in diameter, massive apertures compared to most species. Our retinas contain over 120 million rod cells specifically optimized for low-light photon detection. But more importantly, we have 200 million years of predator evolution encoded directly into our nervous system architecture." She moved to the chamber's center, her steps absolutely silent on the crystalline floor. Several delegates flinched involuntarily, unable to track her movement precisely in the reduced lighting conditions. The fact that something was moving near them without their advanced senses detecting it triggered deep, instinctual alarm responses. We can navigate by echolocation using subsonic vocalizations, track movements through air pressure differentials, detect electromagnetic field variations that your sensors dismiss as background noise because they're too primitive to register. We feel vibrations through our skeletal structure, map environments through sound reflection patterns, track living creatures by the electromagnetic signatures of their nervous systems. Elena moved closer to the conference table, her approach undetected until she was within arm's reach. "Your Majesty," she said to the Hive Queen, moved exactly 3 centimeters to the left when I began speaking about predator evolution. "Your breathing rate increased by 23% when I mentioned hunting in darkness. The electromagnetic field generated by your nervous system shifted frequency twice during my explanation. I've been tracking every single delegate in this room without looking directly at any of you." The chamber fell into stunned silence. "The void wraiths absorb light across all spectrums," Elena continued, her voice carrying a dangerous certainty. "They eliminate heat signatures and disrupt advanced visual detection systems. They create what you consider an impossible combat environment, but for humans, they're creating the perfect hunting ground." Council Prime Zethkar's massive hood trembled with what might have been fear or awe. "You propose to hunt them? These creatures that have terrorized the galaxy for millennia?" Elena's smile was predatory, ancient, and utterly human. "I propose we do what humans do best, Prime. We remind the galaxy why we became the apex predators of our world." The research station on Kepler 442c had been silent for 6 hours and 37 minutes. Captain Marcus Torres crouched in the ventilation shaft above the main laboratory complex, his breathing controlled to the point of meditation. Below him, absolute darkness had consumed the facility like a living thing. Emergency lighting, backup power systems, even the faint bioluminescent glow of emergency exit markers, all extinguished by the void wraith's terrifying presence. The creatures had transformed the research station into a pocket of cosmic void, a space where light itself ceased to exist. It was exactly the environment he'd spent his entire military career training for. "Wraith Hunter Actual, this is Control," whispered Lieutenant Rivera through his bone conduction communicator. Her voice transmitted directly through his skull without any external sound. "Thermal imaging shows complete negative across all spectrums. Electromagnetic sensors show absolute 0. Gravitational distortion sensors are detecting minor space-time fluctuations in laboratory sectors 3, 7, and 12. Whatever's in there is bending reality around itself." "Copy that, Control," Torres subvocalized, his throat barely vibrating enough to trigger the sensor pickups. "Beginning approach vector to Lab 3. Estimated time to contact, 4 minutes. He moved through the maintenance shaft with practiced silence, every nerve in his body attuned to his environment in ways that would have amazed the alien delegates who had dismissed human capabilities. The void wraiths might absorb light and heat, eliminate electromagnetic signatures, and disrupt advanced sensors, but they couldn't eliminate sound waves traveling through metal, couldn't stop air pressure variations, couldn't mask the subtle electromagnetic fields generated by living neural tissue. His pupils had been fully dilated for over an hour now, expanded to their maximum 7mm aperture. Human rod cells, evolved for hunting megafauna across the ice-covered plains of prehistoric Earth, could detect individual photons at the quantum level, in what the aliens called absolute void. He could still perceive the faintest variations in darkness, shadows within shadows, degrees of black that most species couldn't even conceptualize. A whisper of movement below, barely perceptible even to his enhanced senses. Torres froze instantly, every muscle locked in the predatory stillness that had allowed his ancestors to hunt saber-toothed cats and dire wolves. There, a section of darkness that was somehow less dark than the surrounding absolute black, a distortion in the void that spoke of massive presence. The void wraith was feeding on the emergency power conduits, absorbing energy like a cosmic vampire drawing life from the station's dying systems. He could feel its alien attention like cold fingers across his mind, an ancient intelligence that had terrorized civilizations when humanity was still discovering fire. But the creature had never been hunted by something that belonged in darkness, something that had learned to kill in the spaces between light. Torres dropped through the ceiling access panel with cat-like grace, landing in a crouch that would have impressed the persistence hunters who chased mammoths across frozen tundra. The impact was absolutely silent, a technique learned through thousands of hours of training in Earth's darkest environments. The Void Wraith sensed the disturbance, its cosmic consciousness registering something wrong with the absolute stillness it had created. But the creature had never encountered a predator that thrived in conditions where its prey couldn't see. Torres moved through the laboratory like liquid shadow, his footfalls perfectly placed to avoid detection by senses he barely understood. The Void Wraith was 3 meters away, its form barely distinguishable from the surrounding black even to his dark-adapted vision. But he could feel its electromagnetic signature like a heartbeat, sense the subtle displacement of air molecules around its massive form, track its movements through vibrations transmitted through the station's superstructure. The monomolecular blade slid from his wrist sheath without the slightest sound. Forged from exotic matter that existed in quantum uncertainty, its edge could slice through the Wraith's energy-based molecular structure as easily as light through water. The weapon had been designed specifically for creatures that conventional physics couldn't touch. The creature began to turn just as Torres struck with predatory precision. The blade passed through shadow stuff like destiny through time. The Void Wraith's death scream was a howl that existed in frequencies beyond normal hearing. Subsonic vibrations that Torres felt in his bones, in the primitive hunting centers of his brain that remembered when humans were the apex predators of a world filled with monsters far worse than anything the galaxy had imagined. Wraith Hunter actual to control, he whispered into the darkness. 1 target eliminated. Lab 3 is clear. Copy that, Marcus. Outstanding work. Labs 7 and 12 still showing gravitational distortions. Torres smiled in the absolute darkness, an expression that would have terrified every alien delegate who had dismissed human capabilities. It was the smile of something that had remembered what it was born to do. Moving to Lab 7, he replied. Tell the Council their blind humans are cleaning house. Within 3 cycles, the entire galactic strategic paradigm shifted. The Galactic Council watched in stunned, horrified fascination as human Wraith Hunter teams systematically eliminated threats that had terrorized the galaxy for over 3 millennia. The main tactical display screens showed impossible victories unfolding across dozens of star systems. Humans moving through absolute darkness with coordinated precision, tracking creatures that even the most sophisticated sensor arrays couldn't detect, eliminating entities that had previously been considered invincible cosmic forces. This is impossible, muttered Science Cast Leader Vexhull for the 100th time, his cybernetic implants flickering with processing overload as streams of combat data cascaded through his enhanced consciousness. Our comprehensive analysis clearly demonstrates that human sensory capabilities are demonstrably inferior by every measurable galactic standard. You analyzed the wrong capabilities, Elena interrupted from her new position as Special Military Advisor, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone whose species had just rewritten the rules of cosmic warfare. You measured their individual senses in isolation. You never measured their integration, their coordination, their pack-hunting instincts. On the central tactical display, another Void Wraith nest fell to Team Alpha 7. The humans moved through the orbital mining platform like a single organism navigating through absolute darkness, their movements so perfectly coordinated that they seemed to share a collective consciousness. They communicated through subsonic vocalizations that registered below most species' hearing thresholds and electromagnetic field variations, so subtle that the Wraiths couldn't detect or interpret them. Observe their tactical formation, Elena continued, highlighting specific sections of the combat feed with laser precision. Sergeant Kim detects air pressure changes from Wraith movement patterns 40 meters away through 3 levels of bulkhead. Corporal Anderson tracks their electromagnetic signatures through interference that would blind our most advanced sensor systems. Lieutenant Park maps their precise positions by analyzing reflected sound waves too subtle for our equipment to register as anything more than background noise. The holographic feed showed the human team flowing through the mining platform's corridors like liquid mercury through a complex maze. Their movements perfectly synchronized despite operating in conditions that would render every other known species completely helpless. They anticipated each other's actions with uncanny precision, moved through spaces without colliding, coordinated attacks without visible or audible communication signals. "They're pack hunting," whispered the Vorthan delegate, his advanced heat sensors struggling desperately to track the human forms through the absolute darkness. Like primitive predators from evolutionary history. "Not primitive," Elena corrected with sharp emphasis. "Evolved, refined, perfected. 200 million years of predator-prey evolutionary relationships created the most efficient, coordinated killing machine in known galactic space. You just didn't recognize it because you were measuring individual capabilities instead of collective intelligence." Team Alpha 7 cornered 3 void wraiths in the platform's main reactor chamber, a massive space that the creatures had transformed into a pocket of absolute void that should have been completely impenetrable to any known tactical approach. The wraiths had absorbed all available light and heat, creating environmental conditions beyond anything most species could imagine surviving, let alone fighting in. The humans attacked anyway, moving with supernatural coordination. They flowed through the reactor chamber like wolves surrounding prey, one team member drawing the wraith's attention with deliberate noise and movement, while 2 others flanked from positions that shouldn't have been navigable in complete darkness. Their monomolecular weapons found targets that sophisticated gravitational sensors couldn't detect, striking with surgical precision that defied every tactical manual ever written. "This is beyond impossible," chittered the Hive Queen, her 1,000 compound eyes creating frantic patterns of synchronized confusion. "They cannot see the creatures. They cannot detect their electromagnetic signatures. They cannot track their movements through any known sensory mechanism. They don't need to see them," Elena said, her voice carrying a predatory satisfaction that made several delegates unconsciously retreat. "They feel the wraith's presence in ways your species never developed because you never needed to. Air displacement patterns, electromagnetic variance detection, gravitational microfluctuations, infrasound resonance mapping. Humans don't just see with their eyes. They see with their entire nervous system." The last void wraith in the reactor chamber died with a multidimensional scream that registered across 17 different electromagnetic spectrums. The human team stood motionless in the absolute darkness, completely unfazed by environmental conditions that would have paralyzed any other known species within seconds. Teams Beta through Omega are reporting similar success rates across all active engagement zones. Elena continued with clinical precision. 93% kill ratio across 47 separate engagements. 0 human casualties. Complete tactical superiority. Council Prime Zethkar's massive hood had contracted to almost nothing, his scales rippling with patterns that indicated deep psychological shock among his species. "Your species is systematically hunting them to extinction." Elena's smile was ancient, predatory, and utterly terrifying. "Like I told you, Prime, you underestimated the wrong capabilities." The final Void Wraith stronghold hung in the gravity well between 2 dead stars, a fortress of living shadow that had existed since before most galactic civilizations achieved spaceflight. Captain Marcus Torres floated in the assault pod's perfect darkness, his enhanced vision tracking the impossible approaches to the Wraith structure through space that bent light around itself. Around him, 47 other humans prepared for what the galaxy had deemed absolutely impossible. A direct assault on the Void Wraith's primary nest, their ancient home that had spawned nightmares across the cosmos for over 4,000 years. The structure defied conventional physics, kilometers of twisted shadow architecture that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that most species couldn't even theorize about. "Remember," he whispered into the bone conduction communicator, his voice barely vibrating his throat. "They've had millennia to perfect this environment. No light across any spectrum, no heat signatures, no electromagnetic radiation except what they specifically allow. They believe this makes them absolutely invincible." Sergeant Kim checked her quantum blade one final time, the weapon's exotic matter edge existing in a state of controlled uncertainty. They never encountered humans before, she replied with predatory satisfaction. Damn right, Torres grinned in the absolute darkness. Initiating final approach vector. All teams weapons free. Remember, we're not just fighting for humanity. We're showing the galaxy what apex predators actually look like. The assault pods drifted toward the massive structure in perfect silence, their occupants invisible to every sensor system the void wraiths possessed. The humans could feel their quarry's presence like an electrical storm across their nervous systems. Ancient malevolence that had terrorized countless worlds, now completely unaware that it had become prey. The structure was beyond massive, kilometers of twisted corridors and chambers that defied three-dimensional geometry, spaces that folded in on themselves through dimensions that human minds could barely process. Thousands of void wraiths moved through its impossible architecture, preparing defenses against an assault they were absolutely certain couldn't succeed. They had never been challenged in their own domain, never faced an enemy that could navigate the absolute void they called home. They had never faced persistence hunters before. The humans penetrated the structure through maintenance conduits and structural weaknesses that the wraiths hadn't bothered to guard. Who could possibly navigate such passages in absolute darkness that existed beyond the mere absence of light? They moved through the fortress like antibodies through a bloodstream, small teams flowing around obstacles with supernatural coordination, regrouping through silent electromagnetic communication, advancing with the inexorable purpose of wolves pursuing wounded prey across endless Arctic tundra. Contact, Level 7, whispered Corporal Martinez through subvocal communication. 6 wraiths in defensive formation, covering the main approach to the core chambers. Flank left through the secondary conduits, Torres replied without hesitation. Team Delta, apply pressure from above through the ventilation systems. Team Echo, seal the rear escape routes. The void wraiths had arranged themselves in what they considered a perfect ambush position. If their enemies had been dependent on conventional senses or standard tactical doctrines. But the humans flowed around their formation like water around stone, attacking from angles that shouldn't have been possible to navigate, moving through spaces that existed partially outside normal reality. The battle was swift, brutal, and utterly decisive. Quantum blades found shadow flesh with surgical precision, guided by senses the wraiths couldn't comprehend, predict, or counter. The creature's multidimensional death screams echoed through realities most species couldn't perceive, creating resonances that shattered their own defensive formations. This is impossible, broadcast the Wraith Queen's psychic voice across dimensions, her ancient consciousness reeling with incomprehension that bordered on cosmic terror. You cannot see us through the absolute void. You cannot track us through dimensions beyond your understanding. How do you hunt what exists beyond light itself? Torres cornered her in the structure's central chamber, a space of such absolute darkness that reality itself seemed to bend and fracture around the edges. The Wraith Queen was a creature of living void, older than human civilization, terror incarnate for dozens of species across galactic history. She was ancient malevolence given form, a cosmic predator that had never known fear. She had never been prey before. You want to know our secret? Torres asked, his voice steady and confident in the impossible dark that surrounded them. We were never the blind ones. You were. His blade found her heart with perfect, predatory precision. The Galactic Council's emergency session convened in full illumination, blazing lights that hurt human eyes but provided psychological comfort to species still reeling from witnessing the complete extinction of a cosmic threat that had plagued the galaxy for over 4 millennia. Impossible, Science Cast Leader Vexhull repeated for what seemed like the 1,000th time, his cybernetic implants smoking from processing overload as they struggled to analyze the tactical reports flooding through galactic communication networks. 48 hours. Your species eliminated a threat that had terrorized countless civilizations for 4,000 years in exactly 48 hours of coordinated operations. Elena sat at the council table that had once relegated humans to the lowest mining castes, her posture relaxed and confident. The seating arrangement had undergone a dramatic evolution. She now occupied the position reserved for primary military advisors, with the other species representatives arranged around her in a configuration that spoke volumes about the new galactic power structure. The Void Wraiths made a fundamental tactical error, she explained with the calm authority of someone whose species had just rewritten the rules of cosmic warfare. They assumed that eliminating light across all electromagnetic spectrums would eliminate sight itself. They never considered that some species evolved to hunt effectively in conditions where conventional light-based vision was not just irrelevant, but actually counterproductive. Council Prime Zethkar's massive hood trembled with what could have been respect, fear, or a combination of both emotions that his species had rarely experienced simultaneously. Your species. You deliberately trained for this specific scenario. You somehow knew we would eventually face such creatures. No, Prime, Elena corrected with gentle firmness. We didn't train for the Void Wraiths specifically. We trained for this type of engagement because our homeworld demanded it. Earth has indigenous predators that hunt in absolute darkness, prey species that hide in environmental conditions where any visual spectrum becomes meaningless. We learned to kill things we couldn't see because that's how our ancestors survived long enough to develop intelligence, technology, and eventually interstellar travel. She gestured toward the massive tactical displays showing the now extinct Void Wraith territories, their ancient strongholds reduced to empty space and scattered debris. Your species developed advanced technology to overcome environmental limitations and sensory disadvantages. Humans developed technology to enhance and amplify capabilities we already possessed through millions of years of evolutionary pressure. The Hive Queen's 1,000 compound eyes reflected the chamber's intense lights like a kaleidoscope of confusion and newfound respect. Your visual systems remain objectively inferior by every measurable galactic standard we've established. Are they really? Elena asked, her tone carrying a subtle challenge. Your eyes can simultaneously process 17 different electromagnetic spectrums, but can you track a moving target by analyzing the subtle variations in its heartbeat rhythm? Can you navigate complex, three-dimensional spaces using only electromagnetic variance patterns? Can you coordinate pack hunting strategies against enemies that exist partially outside normal spacetime? The chamber fell into contemplative silence as the implications settled across dozens of different species' consciousness. The Etherians exist across multiple dimensional planes, Elena continued, her voice carrying the patient tone of a teacher explaining fundamental concepts. But they can't follow a scent trail that's 3 days old through changing atmospheric conditions. The Vorthans can see heat signatures through solid matter, but they can't sense approaching danger through ground vibrations transmitted across kilometers of planetary crust. The Kithra process visual information faster than our most advanced quantum computers, but they can't detect a predator's hunting intent through microscopic changes in air pressure and electromagnetic field fluctuations. She stood slowly, moving with the fluid grace that had consistently unnerved alien delegates since her first appearance before the Council. You called human eyes weak because you were measuring our limitations instead of our capabilities. You analyzed what we couldn't do instead of understanding what we could do better than anyone else in known galactic space. Council Prime Zethkar's voice carried an entirely new tone, something that sounded remarkably like genuine awe mixed with healthy fear. What classification do you propose for humanity's new position within the galactic hierarchy? Elena smiled, and in the blazing lights favored by alien species, her expression was clearly visible to every delegate present. Predatory, confident, and utterly human. We prefer the designation our Wraith Hunter teams have coined for themselves, she said with quiet pride. Apex Predator. The translation systems throughout the chamber had absolutely no difficulty processing those words, and their meaning resonated across every species present with crystal clarity. Author's note. This story explores the concept that perceived weaknesses can actually be evolutionary advantages under the right circumstances. While humans may not have the most advanced visual systems compared to theoretical alien species, our sensory integration and predatory evolution would create unique advantages in specific combat situations, particularly against enemies that eliminate conventional sensory advantages.